Hello. Today I'm gonna make a video, obviously. A while ago I saw a video on Julia's Book Time, who's a great booktuber, on her channel called Read One, Want More, and the idea is to talk about one book from an author that you've read which made you immediately want to read more of the author's work. Kind of, that's the premise. And I will leave like links to the video that I saw, and also I think who created it, because I don't think it was Julia, in the description box. So I read Freshwater by Kweke Emezi 2 years I believe ago now, and I thought it was an incredible novel. I thought it was so good and very like beautifully written and intense. That made me immediately want to like follow their work, and they've now released another book that I actually do have, which is Pet, which is a children's book, and I also would like to read their next book, which is coming out I think maybe in May, called The Death of Vivek Oji, I think. The whole way they wrote Freshwater was just so good that it really pulled me in to both the world of Freshwater, but also made me really interested and excited to read more from their perspective and read more about what they create. At the end of last year I read The Wooden Doctor by Margyad Evans, and I thought it was really brilliant. It's a sort of coming of age story about a young girl who is sick, and she's like kind of obsessed with this doctor, this Irish doctor. It's just kind of about her life growing up, and she goes to a school in France, and there's definitely lots of kind of like Bronte connections, especially for me I think Villette definitely came through. But it's also just kind of about like, yeah, existing in a vulnerable body and trying to figure out what is wrong with you and falling in love with a doctor. I definitely recommend it, but I'm not sure where to read next after that, so if you do have any suggestions for where I should go, let me know. But I definitely want to keep reading her work. So the next author is Larissa Lai, whose work I have spoken about on this channel before, and actually this novel that I want to read next is in my like 5-star predictions video. The book of hers I have read is called The Tiger Flu, which is a really interesting book. I mean, I'm glad I'm not reading it right now because it's about like the tiger flu, which is sort of a plague, and it's taken over this whole city and this whole land, and it's there are like quarantine rings in the city, and it's very dystopian and very gross and visceral. The two main characters are a 15-year-old girl called Cora and a groom called Carrillo Groundsel, I think, who is part of the Grist sisters, which is a community that like are like genetically engineered to just like reproduce each other like almost exactly. Anyway, it's all very weird and very medical and intense and bodily, but I really liked it, and I'm really excited to read Saltfish Girl. But I'd also like to read her other work too. I think there's one called When Fox Was 1,000, which looks really incredible too. The next author is Angela Slatter, who's a fantasy author, and whose novella Of Sorrow and Such I read 2 years ago and also last year because I reread it because I really liked it that much. It's about a witch in a village. She kind of exists in like a midway space where, you know, people do come to her for help and support, and like women especially do, but then something happens which means that she has to worry a bit more about like her safety in the village, and it kind of escalates from that. It's very beautifully written. I'm a sucker for witchcraft and gender. It's really cool, and Angela Slatter has written lots of books and I really want to read more of them. I think she has also written books in the same like universe that this novella was set in, which I really want to get to. I think the most recent author that I've like engaged with on this list is Sylvia Townsend Warner, whose book Lolly Willows I just read and I just loved so much. It's just so fun and good. Before I even read this I knew that I wanted to read more, like all of her work, or a bunch of it at least, but now that I have read it, like she's just so it was so good. It's like a thrilling mundane book because the way you're reading it and the way you're transported into this woman's life, Lolly or Laura Willows, it's just so fantastic. She has at least I think 5 novels which I really would like to check out. I need to figure out whether I want to read her work in like chronological order because I think that could be interesting, but at the same time I also would just like to read, like there's one called This Summer Will Show I think, which is supposed to be really gay, and she was also gay, like important to know, but I mean you read this story and you like know she's a big lesbian. There's also a novel of hers called The Corner That Held Them, which is about like medieval nuns, which I really want to check out, but that one's from like 1948 or something, so that would be definitely not reading it chronologically. Another author is David Winarovich, who was an artist in the 80s, and he died from AIDS, and he wrote ferociously and brilliantly and beautifully and viscerally about his rage and his experiences of dying, and also his experience of living around people dying, and of homophobia and beauty and grace. So this is close to the Knives, a memoir of disintegration, and it collects a bunch of essays that he wrote, as well as so some of them are kind of about like photography and things, but also about his personal life and experience and his attempts to connect with people. And he's definitely written some other stuff. One of them is called like the Waterfront Journals, I think. They're all non-fiction stuff, and I would just really like to read them because this is an incredible book, and he was like an incredible person. He's very well known on the internet visually because it was his jacket that often gets circulated when people talk about like art and AIDS and ACT UP. Another author is Mina, Candace, Sami, whose novel When I Hit You was nominated for the Women's Prize shortlist in 2017, I think, and I read it then and I thought it was incredible. It's basically about a woman surviving a abusive marriage and kind of like trying to be a writer, and it's really brilliantly written, and it's written for survivors in a really tender way, I think, as much as it's about, you know, really horrible experiences. It was really difficult and very upsetting, obviously, so it's kind of weird to say that I enjoyed it, but I thought it was an incredible book. I actually think she does have 2 other books out, but I have one that came out maybe this year, called Exquisite Cadavers. The next author is a Norwegian author who has more work out, but only one of her books has been translated into English, and that's Jenny Haval, and so the book is called Paradise Rot, which I read and I really enjoyed. There's definitely a kind of debut vibe about it, but it's full of like symbolism and eggs and this kind of like strange, eerie queerness that is really enjoyable. So I really want to read more of her work, also because I know she's written about like Joan of Arc and stuff, so like would love to read. And Val also makes music, and I really like some of the albums that I have listened to of it. So yeah, but I'm really hoping that more of her work is translated from the Norwegian, because it would be really cool if I could read them. I think that's everything I wanted to say today. I hope you are doing okay as you can at the moment. I will hopefully see you soon. Bye. And she's like both wonky and also not quite as wonky as I thought it would be when I trimmed it in the mirror this morning.